Well, look what the cat dragged in, Judge Harrison Blake sneered, his voice thick with contempt as Vice President JD Vance stepped into the courtroom. Hope you left your political grandstanding at the door, Mr. Vance. In here, you're just another witness. Vance met the judge's glare with a measured, unwavering gaze. I'm here to testify, Your Honor. Nothing more, nothing less. His voice was calm, but there was a steel edge beneath it, one that didn't go unnoticed. The tension in the room was electric. Every journalist in the gallery sat forward in their seats, sensing the spectacle unfolding before them. Blake, notorious for his heavy-handed rulings and barely concealed bias, had made his disdain clear before Vance had even spoken. Now the question wasn't just about justice, it was about control. The judge leaned back, drumming his fingers on the bench. "We'll see about that," he muttered, before turning his ire toward his clerk. "Where the hell is my docket? And I said no coffee in my courtroom." His bark sent a visible shudder through the young woman as she scrambled to remove the offending cup. The courtroom, normally a place where the weight of justice settled heavily over its occupants, felt different today, more like a battlefield than a hall of law. Blake knew the eyes of the country were on him, but instead of tempering his arrogance, it only seemed to embolden him. Vance, unfazed, took his seat. He didn't need to say a word. His very presence was a challenge. The gavel hadn't even fallen, and already it was clear. This was going to be a showdown. "Let's get something straight," Blake announced, his voice dripping with contempt. "I don't care what position you hold in Washington. In this courtroom, I am the law. Is that clear, Mr. Vance?" "Crystal clear, Your Honor," Vance replied calmly. "I'm here simply as a witness to the truth." Blake scoffed in response. "We'll see about that." His gaze shifted to the defense table. "Now let's get this circus started." The defense attorney began his opening statement, but before he could finish, Blake interrupted. "I'm already tired of the political theatrics in my courtroom." He shot a pointed look at Vance. "This isn't a campaign rally." As the trial proceeded, it became evident to everyone present that Judge Blake was not merely presiding over a case, he was orchestrating a performance, one where he was the lead actor and Vance was the target. "Your Honor," the defense attorney pleaded, "we are simply establishing the context of Mr. Startling's charitable contributions." "The context?" Blake interrupted, laughing. "The context is that your client is accused of tax evasion. Period. I don't need a history lesson about his so-called charitable work." With each passing moment, Vance remained composed, while Blake's hostility grew. The judge's behavior became erratic, lashing out at anyone who dared to challenge him. When it was finally time for Vance's testimony, Blake's demeanor shifted from disdain to outright hostility. "Stand up straight when you take the oath," he snapped, "and speak clearly. I won't have any political doublespeak in my court." Vance's calm response seemed to infuriate Blake further. "Your Honor, I can attest to Mr. Startling's financial transparency regarding the Faith and Family Foundation." "Here we go," Blake interrupted, rolling his eyes theatrically. Another conservative fairy tale about family values. The gallery stirred uncomfortably, sensing the tension rising. Vance pressed on, determined to maintain his dignity. "I have documented evidence of Mr. Startling's charitable contributions, including the March Foundation meetings." Blake's reaction was immediate and erratic. "Those records are inadmissible," he shouted, though no objection had been raised. "I don't care what kind of fancy connections you have in Washington." "Your Honor," the defense attorney interjected, "on what grounds are you—" "Don't you dare question my rulings." Blake's face was bright red, his hands trembling as he fumbled through papers on his desk. "Your Honor," Vance spoke up, "perhaps we should discuss the specific contents of the March 11th meeting." Blake's face shifted from rage to something resembling panic. "Those meetings are not relevant to these proceedings," he stammered, but his eyes darted to a particular folder on his desk, one that had seemingly appeared that very morning. "Interesting, Your Honor," Vance continued, his tone steady, "considering those meetings directly involved charitable contributions to—" "Enough!" Blake slammed both hands on his bench. "One more word about those meetings, and I'll have you removed." The courtroom was rife with tension as Vance remained unfazed. "But we can't ignore the implications of your rulings," he pressed on. "Your Honor, you've shown a disturbing pattern of bias, especially in the Thompson case last month." Blake's laughter was almost hysterical. That conservative fraud deserved what he got. They all deserve it. These people think they can hide behind their faith and family values. Or perhaps we should discuss the Wilson hearing, Vance interjected, where you mysteriously sealed all records just hours after meeting with representatives from the Liberty Foundation. The judge's face twitched violently. How do you know about, he started, then stopped abruptly, realizing his slip. What do you mean, Your Honor? Vance pressed, a hint of triumph in his voice. About what? Blake's composure was crumbling. I will not be interrogated in my own court, he shouted, but the desperation in his voice was palpable. Actually, Your Honor, Vance replied calmly, everything was obtained legally. Your own security cameras caught the midnight document shredding. Your own phone recorded the threats. Blake lunged forward, pointing a trembling finger at Vance. You planted those. This is a setup. Interesting choice of words, Your Honor, Vance responded softly, especially given your private meetings with certain activist groups. The murmurs in the gallery grew louder. The atmosphere was electric. Blake's face had gone ghostly pale as he realized the trap he had walked into. I want my lawyer, he shrieked, his authority fading. Your Honor, Vance said, his voice steady, perhaps you should explain these transfer records. He produced another document, revealing details of payments made to officers of the court. The gallery erupted in shocked whispers. The evidence suggested a coordinated effort to use the judicial system as a weapon against conservative defendants. I am a federal judge, Blake screamed, backing away from his bench. You can't arrest me. I am the law. The tension reached a breaking point as a team of FBI agents entered the courtroom. This court is now under federal investigation, the lead agent announced, his badge glinting under the courtroom lights. Judge Harrison Blake, stay where you are. Blake's eyes widened with disbelief. You can't do this. I have immunity. I have connections. Do you know who I am? Oh, we know exactly who you are, the agent replied, stepping closer, including your recent meetings with the Liberty Foundation and your offshore accounts. Blake's face twisted with rage and panic as he realized the extent of his exposure. This is all a setup, he screamed, but it was too late. The agents moved in, restraining him as he struggled against them. You think you can come in here and expose? Blake began to say, but Vance cut him off. The only plot here was your systematic abuse of power, he replied. Your actions today have confirmed everything we already knew. As the agents led Blake away, he turned one last time to face Vance, his face contorted in bitterness. You think this changes anything? He spat. There will always be others like me. You can't stop us all. Vance met his gaze steadily. You're right about one thing, Your Honor. There will always be those who abuse power, but there will also always be those who stand up against them. The aftermath was swift. Blake's arrest triggered a cascade of investigations across multiple jurisdictions. The network of corrupt judges began to crumble as evidence mounted and witnesses came forward. In the end, justice prevailed, and the courtroom that day became a powerful symbol of what it means to fight against corruption. As Vance left the courthouse, he knew that while this battle had been won, the war against injustice would continue. But as long as there were those willing to stand up and speak the truth, there was hope for a better future, one where the scales of justice rested firmly in the hands of those who would protect them. Let's keep the conversation going. Subscribe, share, and drop your thoughts below. Your perspective is valuable and might inspire others.